friends, and today we're taking a look at the EchoFix EF-X3. Before we get into it, I think it bears pointing out this is the best delay I've ever used in my entire life. It is astonishingly good. Let's talk about why that is. This is the EF-X3 by EchoFix. If you don't know EchoFix, they are a company out of Australia that for years now have been repairing Roland Space Echoes and providing replacement parts for Roland Space Echoes. The Space Echo is, of course, a classic electromagnetic tape machine, as known for its kind of iconic sound as it is for its total unreliability. And that's where a company like EchoFix comes in. They have spent years working on maintaining, repairing, and offering replacement parts for vintage Roland Space Echoes. And along the way, they learned how to build a better mousetrap. And that became evident when they released their flagship original product, the EF-X2, a high quality, incredible modern take on the analog tape echo unit. But we're not here to talk about the EF-X2. I am thrilled to say that we are taking a look at the EF-X3, and there are some things about this unit specifically that make it my favorite delay unit I've ever used and the most formidable piece of studio tech I have ever had within 1,000 miles of my studio, I think. The EF-X3 is an analog electromagnetic tape echo machine, which means when you lift this lid up, you can actually see a spool of tape working its way through read and write heads in real time, because this is no digital unit. This is the legit real thing. And the ways in which this is a real thing run all the way down. The chorus in this unit is an analog bucket brigade chorus. The spring reverb in this unit is a legit analog spring reverb. This thing is meticulous from top to bottom. The engineering on display, the sound quality on display, the sound design on display, it is insane. The analog preamp in this thing also sounds unbelievable. I ran all of the bass on today's track into the front of this unit and then out to my bass amp just for kind of like preamp gain and saturation. And I love the effect that that gives me. I have run drums through this unit just to kind of like add weight and density to a kick drum before. It's wild. And if you're wondering why I'm able to do all of these non-delay things with a unit like this, it's because for everything going on this front panel, the VU meter, the different delay head options and everything, when you flip this unit around, that's where the real magic of the X3 version of the EchoFix unit comes into play. Because on the back of this unit, you have direct outputs for your dry out, for your chorus and reverb, and for each of the 4 delay heads in this unit, which, if you're following along at home, means that you can take individual sends of all of your delay lines in this device and capture them independently in your DAW, which means you can pan them anywhere you want in your mix, which means this is an analog tape machine that can function as a completely stereo delay environment, and that makes it the best. While working on that intro song, I actually had everything wired up for every conceivable combination of uses all at the same time. And I'm not kidding. My pedal board was running into the front of the EF-X3 and then out to the front of the amp that we were using in this video, the Matchless Lightning over there. And at the same time, I had 2 of the delay heads running out the back directly into my interface over here for those like really wide stereo guitars that you heard and kind of that midsection of the song. And then at the same time, I also have the direct out from the back of the unit into my bass amp, allowing me to plug my bass into the front of this and just use that analog preamp in this thing as gain staging into my bass amp. And the preamp in this thing sounds incredible. I have used it on kick drums. I've used it on bass. It stacks so well with gain pedals in front of an amplifier. All that really high gain stuff you heard on that intro was things like the Jam Pedals Rattler or the Jackson Twin 12 preamp into this, kind of being set to taste to give me kind of however big or chaotic of a guitar tone I wanted. The preamp in this thing is incredible. The chorus is great. The reverb is great. The delay is, of course, the most magical sounding thing in the world. That tape stop on this thing, turning off the motor while you have like audio running through it. There is no digital version of the tape stop that sounds as legit, as real, that kind of, you feel it in your chest the way that real tape stops. This is a like lifetime legacy style unit, in my opinion. This is the kind of thing that is going to live in my studio for as long as I am producing music. There is no substitute for the real thing, as they often say, and this is a great example of that. There are advantages to digital tape devices out there, things like the El Cap and the Volante and all of those devices out there. The ability to, on a kind of knob, be able to age your tape, add warble, add kind of wow and flutter and everything. You would have to damage tape to do that with a unit like this. And if you want to, you actually could kind of mangle up some of your tape, because the EchoFix does come with all the tools necessary to clean and maintain the read and the write heads and the machinery. And it also comes with several replacement tapes for the unit itself. So theoretically, you could bang up one of those tapes and have it on hand for when you want a more worn tape sound versus a kind of like minty new, beautiful, pristine tape. But the tape in it, kind of when it ships, comes sounding so good already. That brand new tape with those treble and bass controls are already so wonderful that I'm smitten with everything I put this thing through. So let's get through a variety of sound samples here. We're going to start things off pretty basic and straightforward. We are going to plug our pedal board into the front of the unit. We are going to run the unit into our amplifier, and we are just going to run through things like that preamp gain, the various delay head configurations, the EQ, the speed, the chorus, the reverb, all that stuff, in kind of a straight-on mono traditional environment into the front of an amplifier. But then we're going to get weird with it. We're going to take a listen to bass tones using that preamp, using the direct out in the back, and then we are going to plug into all four of those delay heads and start playing around with panning our delay in big, wild, creative ways. So let's hear everything that this thing is able to do, because it is a lot. Before we get into it, let's go ahead and talk through our signal chain, the context we're working in, and kind of our order of operations for how we're going to approach this front panel in the context of running it into a tube amp. I'm playing my Balaguer Ambient Select Espada into the Universal Audio Studio Compressor 1176, the Brown Amplification Protein, the Jam Pedals Rattler, and the Jackson Audio Silvertone Twin 12 preamp. From there we go to the Hologram Microcosm, and then into the front of the EF-X3, and then out of the output right here to our amplifier, which is the Matchless Lightning 15 into the Universal Audio aux box. We've got basically guitar line volume at noon, chorus is disengaged, reverb's out, delay is out, the engine is turned off, and we have our output level set to low. Here is what kind of guitar straight into this preamp, kind of set as close to unity as possible into the amplifier sounds like. So I think the way that we're going to try to kind of break this down is we're actually not going to start with the echo itself. Let's start by taking a look at this guitar line volume, the chorus, and the reverb, because it's all very straightforward, and we can kind of tackle all of those individually. As we get into the kind of input gain on the unit itself, we will also kind of showcase its value as a stackable gain stage piece of the puzzle with some of the drives on our pedal board. Let's go ahead and get into it. At these super low volumes, which are great for line level issues, you can also change this output to higher gain. Which means you are not running the preamp as hard, but you are getting more output out of the back end of this thing. Which already gives you really great clipping at the amp level. You're not clipping internally in this thing, but you are definitely clipping the amplifier much more aggressively. But you can also get plenty of that just by cranking this input. And obviously cranking that and hitting that high output is going to introduce some white noise, but also is going to give you yeah, and like I said, this actually stacks incredibly well as well. It can offer some kind of like slight additional kind of body to something more rat voice like that Jam Pedals Rattler. Or something like that Twin 12, which can be, in my experience, a little bit too boxy. If you try to crank the gain too much, I like to put a lot of volume out of it, but I keep the gain relatively low. You know, it's voiced very much like an old Silvertone, so that's going to be the character. But the input volume on this, the input gain on this will actually It is very, very good gain staging. It's a really amazingly well-tuned, well-balanced preamp circuit. Let's go ahead and take a look at that chorus. I mean, if that doesn't sell you right away, I don't know what to tell you. course it gets crazy. For my money, a nice subtle chorus in this thing is the dream. Yeah, it is an amazing, amazing chorus. Analog spring reverb. It's such a well-balanced, well-voiced spring reverb. That combination of that chorus and that reverb alone is just beautiful. Putting a compressor in front of that, and you have everything you need for good 80s tones. Okay, so let's get into the delay side of this thing. The echo mode control here is going to be the combination of playback heads you are selecting. There are 7 modes, and then you have your motor, your sound on sound, which represents your 4th head, and your echo on and off control. So basically you have access to this thing for those first 3 reed heads, and then independent control over that sound on sound mode, which is the longest delay head coming in at, I think, 1.2 seconds. Echo head number 1 is going to be your kind of shortest delay, and it's between 56 and 221 milliseconds, very slapbacky. Echo 2 is going to be your medium of about 121 up to almost half a second. And then your third one is going to be up to 800 milliseconds, being kind of like your most traditionally long form delay head on this thing. And like I said, the sound on sound will also represent a slightly over 1 second long delay head. Past number 3 here, you have 4, 5, 6, and 7, which are going to represent combinations of 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, and all 3 delay heads. And like I said, on top of any combination of those delay heads, you can always add that long delay on top of everything else. A good rule of thumb, you'll want that VU meter hanging out in that red. That's going to be kind of like ideal amounts of saturation, in my opinion, for your delay. So let's bring it up a little bit. You want that ring right there to kind of turn that nice satisfying red. I know that red is traditionally something we try to avoid in audio recording, but that's where the good stuff is in this unit. You hear that? You bring it down a little bit, bring up that echo. Nice and clean. But when you really start to crank that thing, yeah, so like I said, set your input gain first, and then kind of set your volume to taste. Let's go ahead and start things off with that shortest delay head. EQ at noon and noon, feedback at noon, echo volume at noon. We'll kind of set our input gain and then use the echo volume to taste based on the responsiveness we're getting out of this, this input gain. Let's take the reverb out. And so mode 1, obviously, you've got your like super slap. Or your kind of slowest mode in that first one. God, I love that. Let's go to our medium. And again, back up to that minimum. To our slowest, and if we play fast, that'll never not be satisfying. Delay head 3, it's going to be our kind of longest of the 3 primary heads. Again, not the sound on sound. So this is the fastest setting on this delay head. And now, of course, let's take that stepped elevator to the bottom. Every time. I swear to God, every time. And these longer delay heads are where you're going to start to hear some of that kind of very natural tape modulation come into play. These longer, slower moments are going to kind of offer up more time to really hear the artifacts and some of the kind of progressive wear that the tape incurs, even in my limited time using it, which is where all the character lives. We can always clean up that input gain, turn up that echo volume, and get a cleaner repeat. But I, of course, love to live in that slightly gainier tape world. Let's crank up that feedback a little bit and let kind of listen to those kind of wander off. And this is a good opportunity because this is kind of the delay head for it. This is also where you will get your like very classic those really amazing classic dotted eighth style delays. Roll off some of that low end, boost that treble up a little bit, so you've got like some nice attack that goes with it. Yeah, this is, I mean, I live in mode 3 a lot of the time for good reason. And then you can also bring in that reverb, and now you have like full tilt ambience on display. Let's roll the treble back. Let's give it a little bit more low end. And it is worth noting that that sound on sound is accessible over top of any of these delays at any given time. So before we get into 4 and onward for our kind of combinations, it's worth knowing that you can kind of take something like your shortest delay and just drop the longest delay over top of it. And of course, sound on sound taken out would be or you can take the traditional echo out and just leave yourself with that sound on sound. Which, as you can tell, is going to be a lot dreamier, a lot slower moving, kind of peak ambience for the device. For context, the longest mode in traditional delay heads and then sound on sound. So this is some good chorus on, reverb back in. You gotta love it. Okay, let's turn our echo back on and let's get back into these combinations. So this is going to be your two shortest delays stacked together. So delay heads 1 and 2. Chorus out. This is going to be medium and long together. One and 3 together. And all 3 delays stacked together. And of course, you can also stack that sound on top of that for some of the most runaway of all time multi-tap delay. Okay, jumping back to mode 3, let's take a look at our bass and treble controls. So obviously you have a bunch of great control here, the ability to really run that for really murky, kind of like low repeats. Or the ability to cut that out for a lot of clarity in your repeats. which can be great when you're doing that kind of. And conversely, this will bring in, of course, some added white noise if you're really kind of like pushing it on all fronts, but a lot of treble and clarity for your repeats. Or you can roll that off for some really great murky repeats, very gentle sounding tape. What I really love about this is the way that, especially when you're doing that oscillation thing, the way that roll-off really kind of creates a great percussive element that feels very dark and un-guitar anymore. And if you want to just hear those repeats, we can actually kill dry. And of course, best motor stop in the game. One other fun thing worth taking a look at is the fact that you can take an expression pedal or a CV output and run it over TRS into your remote speed control or your remote feedback control. So plugging it into feedback will actually give us the ability to kind of like control runaway oscillations from a foot switch, which is really cool. So now we've got or conversely, into our speed control, bypassing the speed control and instead putting it on our foot switch. Did the world need this heavily engineered of a rainbow machine? Probably not, but here we are. Okay, so we now have the EF-X3 set up for direct out for each of the delay heads. The way we have things configured right now is our guitar running through the pedal board and into the front of the EF-X3, and then out to the front of our amplifier with our direct turned on and echo volume at 0. And the reason for that is this echo volume control right here controls the output of the echo, not the direct outs on the back of the unit. So all 4 of those are plugged in and running to separate sends in our DAW right now. And the beauty of that is you can basically take them and you can kind of like let them sit in center channel with your dry guitar like this. And the beauty of that is now you have the ability to set level for independent delay heads as well as panning. So you can leave them all center channel mono alongside your dry guitar and get a very traditional. And the nice thing about that is you could actually grab specific delays in post as well. Capturing each of those delay sends as their own thing actually gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of picking what delay heads you want to be more and less prominent in terms of just pure levels behind your guitar signal, kind of in the mixing process. And you are also technically getting a slightly more clean version of that delay because the delay is bypassing the front of our amplifier, and we are instead getting our dry guitar into the EF-X3 and then out to the DAW, which is also why this configuration is really cool for other instruments that would not normally hit an amplifier in the first place. There is something a lot more interesting than being able to pick individual delay heads for kind of parts in post, and that is the ability to pan them out in your stereo spread. So let's go ahead and take our delay head 1 and pan it hard left, delay head 2, pan it hard right, delay head 3, hard left again, and delay head 4, that sound on sound, and pan it hard right as well, giving us progressive ping-ponging effects that sound like this. Yeah, it's fascinating. And you'll notice that we're only getting 1 repeat right now, despite feedback being up. The output of those delay heads bypasses the sound on sound and echo on being turned on or off in this context. Each of those heads, when it gets written, it goes out the direct and the back. And by turning on these individual echo on and sound on sound, and then selecting through this echo mode, actually is what introduces the delay heads into the feedback path of the unit itself. So as you heard, we are getting a single repeat right now. Each of those 4 heads playing back 1 time. But let's go to 3 because I think it's the most consistent. If we turn our echo on, you will hear. And you can hear those kind of fade away as we go. And here's an interesting thing is the delay that gets introduced into the feedback path. Turning this on doesn't introduce all of them into the feedback path unless you're in mode 7, obviously. But the delay head that gets introduced into the feedback path and then it gets reprocessed through each of those 4 heads is dependent on that echo mode. So you'll get different kind of accentuated moments of rhythm, so to speak, by selecting a different delay head. So let's run through kind of how each of those sound differently. So we have echo turned on for feedback, sound on sound turned off for feedback, but we are in mode number 1. And then head 2. Feedback path for head number 3. And this is typically my favorite because it gives us the most consistent kind of medium to long, kind of smooth rhythmic, like kind of predictable rhythm. Yeah, I love that. You can also get into those kind of multi-mode heads like we saw up here. Or, of course, all of them, of course, except for sound on sound, which is off right now. And then you can turn that sound on sound and just get forever murkiness, which is really, really nice. And of course, by turning those two off, you go back to just nothing in the feedback loop, and you can bring sound on sound in so that that longest delay is reprocessing through all of your individual delay heads. And of course, you still have the option to blend some of this into your amplifier as well if you want just all of the murk. love about this is it allows you to get really creative in ways that I got really attached to with something like the Strymon Volante, but now with the quality and precision and beautiful messed upness of a real tape echo. Things like in our DAW, panning our delay heads across the spectrum. You could do things like, for example, this, panning delays 1 through 4, hard left, medium right, hard right, giving you something that sounds a little bit like this. Or conversely, I'm a big fan of delay heads 1 and 2 being ping-ponging but soft center, so like halfway to left, halfway to right, and then delay heads 3 and 4 being hard panned, hard left, hard right, that sounds like this. So that is an overview of what it is that I love so much about the EchoFix EF-X3. It's not just that it's one of the best sounding delays in the world. It's not just that it has some of the best engineering of anything I have ever used in the studio, the build quality, the look, the sound quality being unparalleled and unmatched of anything I have used, but also the fact that the feature set is the kind of thing that just gives you such great flexibility. The ability to take those individual delay heads and pan them out in your mix. The fact that you could take that reverb and apply stereo processing to it in post to create an hybrid analog stereo reverb if that was something that you wanted to do. The EF-X3 is a foundationally important piece of my workflow these days. I am astonished by how good it sounds, and I just wanted to share that. To close things out, we're going to go ahead and use it on one more instrument that we haven't yet so far. I played a little bit of felt piano into my DAW, some really great lo-fi, kind of quiet sampled piano that I'm a big fan of. And then we went ahead and reamped it through the EF-X3. We're also going to apply some parallel reverb from the Strymon Big Sky plugin to just show you kind of how you can take something like a single quiet sounding piano part and turn it into something big and expansive and beautiful. So we're going to go ahead and go out on some ambient piano from somebody who doesn't know how to play piano. So thank you so much for watching. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. And let me know what you think of the EF-X3. Let me know what your favorite tape delay emulation or real thing is that you have ever played. And I will see you next time.